Okay, so today I am going to start my in-depth review from start to finish of how I use my Raytech Tumble Vibe. It's the TV5 5-pound Raytech Tumbler. The instructions as far as what I do work every time. I get great results. Most of what this is could be applied to almost any vibratory tumbler, but there's going to be little differences here and there. I would think any of the Raytechs are going to be real similar, but we're going to show you just how I get a good result every time. And so what I do with this, I use this for stages 2, 3, and 4. So my rocks here have all been tumbled in stage 1 in a rotary tumbler, and then when they get nice and smooth, I move them on into the vibratory tumbler. And so what that does, instead of taking another month in a rotary tumbler, I will have this done in 6 days. My rocks are a mix of agates and jaspers. There's a few other things. There's some petrified wood, but they're all harder rocks. I've even got a dinosaur bone, agatized dino bone. But they're all hard rocks, so you should have some pretty fun stuff to see. There's some tiger's eye in there. We'll go over that in a minute, but I do like to keep them. I'm not as anal about having every rock be the exact same type as others, but I do like them to be similar in hardness. My Raytech did come with 2 bowls. I use this one only for polish, and the other one, as you can see, is for stages 2 and 3. I'm probably just going to be throwing out random things I think of as we go, but first let's load the barrel up. Got a piece of petrified wood. These 2 are bird's eye marble from Utah. Some agates. Dino bone I showed you. Another piece of petrified wood. Got a piece of jasper. Looks like I've got some blue tiger's eye and gold. Looks like there's 3 Bahia agates. This is Veracite. I know it does not polish up perfectly, but I do like to use it to smooth it out and then use it as a display piece. Let's see, we got some King Cobra jasper, we've got some leopard skin jasper, a whole bunch of different agates, a piece of Kambaba jasper, some bloodstone. So yeah, we got a pretty good mix. I'm just going to pour all these in. And so this is the most important part is, as you can see, we're only about half full. And you like to run a vibratory tumbler almost completely full. And so I've got a whole bunch of ceramic media, and we're just going to fill that the rest of the way. This is a mix of sizes. Just helps get down between all the little rocks. And I'm going to move these ceramics on through every stage with these rocks. Okay, so I've got that just about full. We may have to add some more when we turn them on. But first, I'm going to go fill this whole bowl with water and show you how we get it wet and how I prep it. Okay, so I fill the whole bowl up with water so everything gets wet. Right up to the brim there. And then I use the lid to just block, just like you're draining fat out of meat. And then I let all the water drain out. And what that does is it just ensures that everything starts out moist but not submerged. So there's water on everything. We'll be back over at the bench. Okay, so I've done a whole nother video of little tips and tricks, just a general overview of what I like about this machine. And in one of those, it's going to be really loud. I really recommend getting this automotive trim. It's adhesive foam made for like window seals on cars. Get it at any auto store. Really helps keep the noise down on this machine. But the next step, once everything's moist, I'm going to mount the machine. I also bought a rubber washer that I put on before the nut here, and that helps it just waterproof it further so you don't get any dripping down, which can make a mess under here. Since I've added the washer, I haven't had a single drop. Now it's really important with this nut to get it really tight. You want to make sure it's really squeezing down on this washer. Otherwise the bowl will slowly work itself loose and then it just spins on here and the rocks quit moving. So if your hands are wet, I use a towel sometimes. They're nice and dry right now, so I can tell. But I wrote on these bowls too, so then I know, I come check it in 10 minutes or so. If this is in a different spot to the writing, I know that this was not tight enough and to retighten it. For stage 2, I'm going to be using 120-220 silicon carbide grit, and I use 2 tablespoons in the 5-pound tumbler. On my special spoon for 220. Now, if you were working really soft rocks in the 220 stage, I will also add a tablespoon of borax just to help thicken up the slurry. With hard rocks like this, I don't do that at all. Just run straight grit and have great results. Okay, so I'm just going to check the movement here. You want to make sure that the rocks are tumbling in a circle like this, and then also moving a little bit around the bowl. Be careful, sometimes it can make a mess when you start shaking this without the lid on. So I always watch it. Usually it's okay though. You can see the rocks start coming up to the top. That's the only ceramic. So I know it's going to be good now. I am going to add a little bit more ceramic media just because we know once it mixed with the rocks, the level went down a little bit. And it just helps to really have this full. I don't think you can overdo the ceramic. Last step. Just replace the lid. Same washer as goes on the inside. You don't have to do this one quite as tight, but you still want to get it fairly tight. Then I'm going to start this up and check it I'm going to run this stage for 2 days, and I'm going to check the fluid every 2 hours. I keep a spray bottle on hand of just plain water. If it seems like the rocks are not moving fast enough, I'll do 2, 3, 4 sprays, and then wait 5 minutes and check it again. Sometimes you have to add a little bit more, 8 to 10 sprays. But you just always want to keep it thick, but just still where it gets some good movement. This second stage often does dry out. So I'm just going to get this started, watch the movement for a minute, and then we'll check on it in 12 hours. here with the lid, the sound is much better. See the grit starting to get mixed in. Yeah, we'll be back in 12. Okay, we're going to do a really quick check. It's been 12 hours. It's slowed down a lot. So I'm just going to add a few squirts of water. And then we're just going to start it back up and check in another 12 hours. Okay, it's been 12 more hours, and I just want to show you the rocks have really slowed down. This is pretty typical of when you know you need to add some water. Still moving, but just really sluggish, so I'm going to add quite a bit, maybe 10, 12 squirts. And then you just let it run for a few more minutes and just see if it gets better. I'm going to come check it again in about 10 minutes, but it should be moving good again. And then we'll check again in 12 hours. Just to show you real quick, it's been 10 minutes since I added the water. We're moving a lot better now. I'm just going to run that 12 more hours, and then we'll do another check. Thanks. Okay, we are at 36 hours, and it has slowed a lot way down again. Let's just show you. Really thick slurry. So I'm just going to add more water. And then run it for 12 more hours, and then they'll be ready to move on to stage 3. Okay, so we're at 48 hours. You can see we still had a nice thick slurry. Still moving pretty good. A little slow, but it's just fine. So to clean this out, I'm just going to put a little bit of dish soap and then a little extra water in here, and then run it for 10 to 15 minutes, and that will just help make the rocks a lot easier to clean the slurry off. So I'm just going to run it like that for 15 minutes, and then we'll see you back and we'll clean them up and go on to stage 3. Okay, so it's been running in the soap and water. You can see the slurry's a lot easier, well, a lot less thick. So we're just going to wash these really good. So you want to get everything just super clean. That includes the lid, the washers, everything. I have just a big soapy scrub brush that I use to clean out the bowl really well. You want to get all the grit out from that last stage. So another thing a lot of people recommend is between this stage they will do like a full borax clean. I have never ever done that after this stage. as long as I clean the rocks good enough by hand, I've never had a problem. But you could add a couple tablespoons of borax to this and some water and run it for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and that will help clean the rocks really well. I don't do that until before the polish stage, but other people say to do it between every stage. As long as I clean them good, I've never needed to. But I'm just going to finish scrubbing this up and then we'll be back. Okay, so you want to make sure in this stage you always are keeping these rocks wet. And so I filled the bowl with water, so each rock I clean I'm just going to put in the water so it stays completely wet. But in this stage, I'm going to go through each rock individually, clean it by hand. I've got a toothbrush here. Sometimes I have to use my big brush, but I'm just going to go through and get all of the little holes, if there is any, just with a toothbrush, and make sure no grit is stuck in those holes. This rock is a great example. It's got some holes, and you can see there's lots of grit stuck in it. And that kind of stuff is what you need to get out before the next round. So I'm not going to show them all, but you want to make sure each one, if they're perfectly smooth, you don't have to do any scrubbing. Sometimes it'll really show you where you have any crevices. This rock has one. You can see there's just a little bit caught in there. So that's the kind of stuff we're going to be looking for. Okay, I'm just going to finish doing this all by hand so you don't have to watch all of it, and then we'll be back when we're ready to reload. Okay, so you also got to be really careful that you get these pretty clean. So I just do that using my little hand sprayer. Just get all the little grit out of there as I load. Sometimes too, I'll find an example here. The grit will have some natural spot color to it. That is not grit stuck in it. Just make sure they're really clean. It's really not rocket science. Okay, so just like the last stage, make sure the bowl is full of water. We're just going to pour all the water out. And I'll see you at the bench to load the grit. Okay, so we're going to start the tumbler now. First, I'm going to put on my washer. And one of these. This long screw is my least favorite part of this tumbler, but it's really not that big of a deal. We'll want to use a dry part of my sleeve here to get this really tight. When your hands are wet, you can't get it tight enough. Okay. And so for this stage, I am going to run 1 tablespoon of borax with it. Just helps make the slurry a little thicker. Then we're just going to run a tablespoon of 500 aluminum oxide, and just 1 tablespoon for this round seems to be just fine. You can use silicon carbide or aluminum oxide. I haven't seen much of a difference. They both work, but aluminum oxide is supposed to polish a little bit better. And just so you know, at this stage, after stage 2, the rocks will noticeably be smoother to feel, but they're not going to be shiny at all. So if yours aren't shiny yet, don't even kind of panic. Okay. I just like to run it and just make sure everything's moving okay. Looks great, so I'm just going to put the lid on, tighten the second nut, and then I'm going to check on it in 12 hours. This stage, I am going to run for 2 days, checking every 12 hours. I have to add water. You don't have to add water as often in the later stages, is because it's not doing as much grinding as the second stage does. But we're just going to let it run, and we'll see you in 12 hours. Okay, it's been 12 hours on the 500 grit. We're getting a nice thick slurry. Just want to show you we're still moving real good. I haven't had to add water. And so I'm not going to add water. I'm just going to check again in 12 hours. Okay, it's been 24 hours now on our stage 3. To show you how it's moving, I have not added water at all. That batch is still moving good. The slurry is nice and consistent. It's still sticking to the rocks really well. I'm not going to add any. We're just going to check it again in the morning, 12 more hours, and we'll see you then. Okay guys, we're at 48 hours in stage 3, and it's definitely a lot drier, but I did not end up having to add any water. I'll show you how it's still moving. If I weren't done with this stage, I would go ahead and add water at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to the polish stage and start the prep work there. So just like last time, I'm just going to do a little squirt of dish soap and then some extra water. Let this do a little soap bath for a few minutes. This just makes it easier to clean. Another option, so I'm going to use, for the 4th stage on hard rocks, I use a sonic cleaner. I'm a mechanic and I use them to clean parts a lot. And it works really good on hard rocks. Some rocks like opal and like rocks down into the 5s, I probably wouldn't use the sonic cleaner. But if you don't have a sonic cleaner, which most people don't, you can just add a couple tablespoons of borax in here and a lot of water and run it for a few hours, and it pretty much does the same thing. It just cleans them really, really good. And I'm saying you would do that after you clean all the grit off. Then you put everything back in with water and borax and run a cleaning cycle that way. But I'm going to show it just the way that I do it with my sonic cleaner. But just know, if you don't have one, you can do the borax and it works just fine. Okay, this ran for about 10 minutes. You can see we've got some suds. Rocks are a little cleaner. They're just going to be a lot easier to rinse here. Honestly, with the method I use, I'm not going to go too crazy with the rinsing, because the sonic cleaner gets them clean anyway, but you can see how easy just one bucket did there. One bowl, I should say. It is important at this point to not get the rocks dry. Show you a few. They are feeling super, super smooth. I have a special bucket or a special bowl just for polish, but if not, you want to make sure to get this crazy clean. All of this gray crap off in the rim here. This is the stage you want to go beyond, up above and beyond on the clean. It will just make your polish have that many less issues. You want to clean the lid really good, and even the washers and the nuts really good. And again, like usual, I use my handy dandy soap brush. I won't make you watch the whole thing, but it is a good idea. Just remember, keep these wet until we get into the sonic cleaner. This is going to be a good test of the sonic cleaner with rocks like this. You can see there is just polish everywhere. And once they're out of the sonic cleaner, I will dry them off completely because they'll be clean, and we'll show you how that works. But I'm just going to hand brush everything, and then I'll see you in the house. Oh, real quick, if you did use a borax cycle, this is where you would want to take each rock and individually clean it with a toothbrush or with a brush like this, and just get all the grit out of those little cracks like I showed you, and then run it for a couple hours with some borax and water. But we'll see you in a minute. Okay, everything's loaded up here in the sonic cleaner. I purposely did not clean them perfectly just to show you that it works. And I do have these little, I bought these for a sonic cleaner that I put all the little tiny rocks in. Just drop that in as well. I run it for 15 to 20 minutes with some borax in the water and a little bit of dish soap. I'm going to try and show you just what happens when you turn this on. You can start to see it working pretty quickly. See all kinds of grit popping out of there. Yeah, we'll check on them in 20 minutes. Okay, so the rocks are out and drying. Real quick, just one other bonus to having this is you can also use it to clean the bowl and the lid and the other parts, and they come out perfectly clean. Another thing, when you got to make sure when the ceramics move on, they're just as clean as the rocks. I do not run these through the sonic cleaner, just because they go through the grate and get on the bottom and shake around and probably damage it. So just make sure you rinse the ceramics really good. And I know I showed this last time, but this is a really good example of one that these spots are not grit. That's part of the ceramics, but just make sure they're rinsed really good. And here are the rocks. They are perfectly dry now. Well, not perfectly, but real close. You can see we're starting to get some shine. Not crazy shine, but they're looking pretty good. I'll show you a couple examples here. This is one where it would be really hard to clean, and those big holes are free of grit. These are just part of the rock. It's not grit. Here's the piece of wood we showed earlier. As you can see, no grit in the very complicated set of cracks. So it's really a good method to get them clean. But I'm going to get the polish barrel loaded up here, and I'll be right back. So I've got my polish barrel loaded up. I do mark them just to make sure I remember. And same as the other steps, we're just going to put the ceramic media in with this completely full of water. And then at the end, we're just going to use the lid to pour out all the water, and then we'll go load up the grit. Okay, we've got everything loaded in here. I'm just going to add 1 scoop of borax, 1 tablespoon. And then I'm going to do 1 scoop of polish. This is Rock Shed aluminum oxide polish. And I'll just show you that it's working here. We'll be right back. So we're just going to turn this on, make sure everything's working okay. It looks great. So we're just going to get the lid on and check every 12 hours. We're going to run this for 2 days. Okay, it's been 12 hours. I'm just going to make this real quick, not even take it apart because it's moving real well. I'll just show you real quick. Everything's moving great. We still got a thick slurry in there, so we'll check it in 12 more hours. Okay, it's been 24 hours now in polish. I want to show you the movement. Still moving really well. I see no reason to add any more water. So we'll check it again in 12 hours. Okay, we're at 36 hours and it is moving a little bit slower, so I'm going to put a couple squirts in. Okay, we're at 48 hours. I've taken a couple out and just rinsed them to make sure they're nice and clean, or nice and polished, and they look great. So we're just going to wash them out just like normal. A little bit of soap and a little bit of water. Run it about 10 minutes and then we'll rinse them off completely. Okay, ready to do our final clean. I'm just going to do a rinse and then we're going to head into the to my kitchen and do our bath in the sonic cleaner. But just a quick reminder again, if you don't have one, you just add 2 tablespoons of borax water like we did with this dish soap and just run it for a few hours. Probably 2 hours would be good. And then just clean everything really good with a toothbrush by hand and let them dry and you're good to go. If you have a dedicated polish barrel, I usually don't worry too much about even getting it all that clean, honestly. Just rinse it really good. Because who cares if you get some polish in your polish. Now the rocks, however, you have to clean very well. Just to give you an idea of some of the issues, you can see there's still grit in all the cracks. This is a great example. All these little holes filled with white grit. So it's important not to let these dry, but we'll see you in at the sonic cleaner. Okay, we have the cleaner loaded up here. I do run heat on it at the highest temp it'll go. I'm going to run it for about a half hour this time just to make sure everything gets out for the final clean. And then we'll see you after. Okay, so everything is out. Everything's clean and out. We're just going to let them dry and then we'll get a close-up and see how we did. Great, and I'll show you why. This is like a conglomerate rock. You can see the hard parts polished really nicely, but those white parts in the middle did not at all. This is a King Cobra jasper. It polished okay, but again, these middle parts are softer than the outside, so overall not great. And this one has a lot of pyrite. It's a cool rock, but the whole thing isn't shiny. So let's go to some cool ones. Here's some Drum Mountain agate from Utah. This stuff takes a gorgeous shine. Here's a piece of bird's eye marble from Utah. It does not take like a mirror shine, but does shine. It's a really cool material. Here's a really, really pretty piece of green jasper with some agate in it. A couple pieces of bloodstone. Really pretty polish there. Here's a cool agate. I love that green color in it. It's had so many different kinds of rock that really only the one side got cool, but it's really cool. Here's another piece of that same stuff. Another piece of it. Here's a couple different jaspers. Just really, really pretty shine. Jasper probably takes the best shine out of anything I've worked. Another cool little piece. Another piece of that, the great cool green. Let's see. Here's another, some kind of jasper. Really polished nicely. Here's a little tiny garnet. This is a piece of agatized dino bone. They don't really end smooth because you can still feel the texture, but they take a nice polish. There's just something about it that's really cool to me. Let's see here. Here's a little piece of crazy lace agate. Polishes beautifully. Here is another agate, Botswana. Sorry, you can see my fingerprints there. Here's some Bahia agate pieces. These take a great shine as well. This is my favorite one. This one was kind of interesting. And this one isn't as cool on the design, but it took an incredible shine. Let's see, here's some Dalmatian jasper. Now we did some petrified wood. I think these turned out really cool. I like to leave, usually with petrified wood, a lot of issues because it makes it look more like it is wood. Another petrified. It usually polishes up super nice as well. That's a cool piece. Another big petrified wood. Here's a couple tiger eye pieces. One of my favorite rocks. Blue tiger eye. Another favorite of mine. Man, that's pretty. And then last, I'll show you a couple of Kambaba jaspers. polished up real nice. Got my fingerprints once again. But yeah, hopefully you learned something. Really successful batch. I think this is probably my favorite rock from it. Show one more time. Hawkeye or blue tiger eye. If you have any questions or is there something you do differently that works, let me know in the comments. Thanks.